I'm Louie. I'm the Director of Creative Writing here at the New School, and I'm very pleased to welcome you here for one of our longtime series, which is readings with Cave Canem. Tonight with us is Derrick Lynn Austin, Aishan Hutchinson, and Colleen McElroy, and we're so pleased to have them here tonight. Please join me in a round of applause. And, well, we have a lot of great readings, so I think I will just hand it over to Nicole Seeley, Director of Programs for Cave Canem. Nicole.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am Nicole Seeley, Programs Director at Cave Canem. As you know, Cave Canem is a national organization dedicated to cultivating the artistic and professional growth of Black poets. Learn more about us, what we're up to, and ways to support by visiting our website, cavecanempoets.org. Please check out our table where you can buy the poets' books and sign up to be on our mailing list. I'd like to thank our generous host, the New School, especially my dear colleagues, Luis Jaramillo and Lori Lynn Turner. Thanks also to our generous funders, Mrs. Giles Whiting Foundation, the New York State Council on the Arts, and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, as well as Amazon Literary Partnerships. And of course, all of you for coming out tonight. It is my pleasure to introduce Cave Canem Fellow, friend, and faculty member, respectively, Derrick Lynn Austin, Aishan Hutchinson, and Colleen McElroy. Derrick Austin is the author of Trouble the Water, selected for the 2015 A Poulin Jr Prize. His work has appeared in Best American Poetry 2015, New England Review, Callaloo, Nimrod, and elsewhere. Currently, he is the Ron Wallace Fellow at the University of Wisconsin. Aishan Hutchinson was born in Port Antonio, Jamaica. His poetry collection, Far District, won the Penn Joyce Osterweil Award. Other honors include the Whiting Award, the Glenna Lucy Award, and the Larry Levis Prize. His work has appeared in Poetry, The Nation, Paris Review, Plowshares, Narrative, and elsewhere. Hutchinson's poems have been translated into German, Polish, Russian, and Spanish. He teaches at Cornell University. Colleen J. McElroy is a professor emeritus of English and creative writing at the University of Washington. She is the former editor-in-chief of the Seattle Review and has published 9 poetry collections, most recently Blood Memory. McElroy has received the Before Columbus Award, 2 Fulbright Research Fellowships, 2 NEA Fellowships, a DuPont Visiting Scholar Fellowship, and a Rockefeller Fellowship. Please welcome our dear readers. First up, Derrick Lynn Austin, who will be followed by Aishan Hutchinson, and then finally, Colleen J. McElroy.
Hi, how's the sound? Everybody can hear me? Awesome, how's everybody feeling tonight? Good. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you to Nicole and Lori and the beautiful folks at Cave Canem and the New School for organizing this event. Thanks to Aishan and Colleen. I'm really honored to read with you guys tonight. And yeah, thank you all for coming out, and let's get into the gig. So I'm gonna start with a newer poem that's actually not in the book, but it's sort of my New York poem, and I tend to read it every time I come to town. And it's called Taking My Father and Brother to the Frick. Disembark, the Turners seem to say, those starburst barges glowing in the dusk, but I can't read old Rembrandt. His guarded eyes are jewels, like black men. Even the loaned marble busts of kings and soldiers fail to arrest you. It's nearly closing time. The elderly linger, rapt. Who has looked at either of you lately with such tenderness? Entering the narrow hall, I ignore my favorite portraits, their ruffles and bodices, carnations and powder puffs, afraid to share my joy with you. Yet your bearing in this space, the procession of your shoulders, the crowns of your heads, makes them sing anew. You are both good men. Walk into the Fragonard room. You both seem bored still. It's fine. Perhaps we can progress like these panels, slowly and without words, here, the city where I first knew men in the dark, in this gold and feminine room. This next poem is called Okaloosa, which is the name of the county in Florida where I'm from. Okaloosa. I like the heron best because it has no song. Flying over the water, its mating cry, mournful, aggressive, and internal. Seaweed and creamy foam float on the tide's restless lapping, licking my feet like a lost dog. I am no master. The Gulf collects its own scraps, rows of hotels hollowed out in plastered ochre by sunsets. Knocked down by Ivan or Dennis, you lose track after so many seasons. Mist hangs over shoddy condos, beachcombers scan the quartz burrows of ghost shrimp. A drunken couple stumbles somewhere. Before they were expelled, Choctaw called this place Okaloosa, dark water. The land and the body are complicit in their own decay. Our works turn spindrift in the sea. A heron lands on a brick and will not move as I walk past, its beak a crusted ancient weapon. What am I to it but another animal competing for dunes and fish? The great blue flies off, calling its mate. Even with walnut brains, they understand. This poem has an epigraph from John Donne's Christmas sermon, and the line is, "In heaven, it is always autumn." Tidewater Psalm. By sunset, the cricket's trilling begins in the airless damp. Rich with salt and the sulfurous fumes, the Gulf flags off. Bristling cattails brush my hands. The light-crested water rises and falls like a chest flecked with blonde hairs. I feel estranged from you. A shoal of minnows breaks, silvering my ankles like a mirror. My heart swims in gladness at the changeable world. Tell me, in heaven it's warm enough to wade into this fine transparence, never want for air, only light and water, and be as the river flowing into the sea, which gives up its name. So in the book, there's a section of poems that respond to the BP oil spill that happened a few years ago. And this poem that I'm about to read is a persona poem in the voice of the Gulf, because I am wild like that. And this poem is called Dominion. I know your works, netting palm-sized oysters and crabs, stinging them with cayenne and lemon. You bulldoze waterlogged foundations and sheet metal rusting in intersections, building, rebuilding, so you and the hurricanes you name like children have somewhere to go. Marsh grass parts for oil drums, your sons and cousins work the rigs, an aunt sweeps a gift shop, painted with cartoon swordfish and shrimp. What would you do otherwise? But I have this against you. Subsurface plumes and lesioned fish belly up in booms, men in hazmat and business suits roped off the coast, and authority was given to them over me. They said, the spill will clear. Neither will there be tar balls nor dispersants. These will be washed away. I miss your boats docked breast up on cypress knees, the trawl nets combing over me. I miss reading their names reflected backwards. I miss pelicans and swimmers. Despite my name, what you leave to the delta, I collect. I ring 5 horizons like sleep. When algal bloom and nitrates lap your feet, when crawfish spill onto your plate, I am at your table. So this is also another newish poem that's not in the book. Sleeping with straight boys. God. You looked like you could walk on water, long-haired, selfless, and lacking wit. You looked like a boy who couldn't remember if he was Catholic or not as he fingered the last of the weed, rolled and lit. You looked like you could walk on water, knew other tricks. The good book opens with our father and mother and that fruit they bit. You looked like a boy who couldn't remember the plot. I showed you how Adam asked her with an apricot, told you to bite to the pit. You looked, you could. Walk on water, finesse my zipper, cause fig and vine to wither, inspire me to speak in tongues. Straight, you looked like a boy who couldn't remember. I kissed you twice, your chin dripped sugar. You say it was impossible, say I'm talking shit. You looked like you could walk on water. You looked like a boy who couldn't remember. I'm so foolish. How many of you have seen the documentary Paris is Burning? Yay! So many of you are my people. I'm so glad I'm here. So for folks who don't know, after the reading, go home and find this on the internet. You have to watch this. So Paris is Burning is a documentary that came out in the early 90s that documented the ballroom scene in New York City. And it's just an amazing piece of art. And this poem that I'm going to read has an epigraph from the movie that goes, O-P-U-L-E-N-C-E, opulence. You own everything. Everything is yours. Opulence. I've sashayed into your life from another time. Silk ascot and oxfords as I take a turn around the garden. I'm dolled in lace and whalebone corset, crying in a mirrored hall. There's no sweeter sound than the opera of indulgence. A waltz, I've rolled with Mozart. Why watch countesses when the ballroom is up the block? Let's vogue and duck walk, our bodies barked into motion. House music slinks and shivers. My soul is velvet, sovereign, black. Princess Cece's bright salon, her plaited hair is damp with tears, pissing from a gondola, the gardens of Bamarzo. Just off Ibiza, Amanda Brognac fills our cups. McQueen, Met Gala, the ambiance of coffee when you hate it. Tilda Swinton's cheekbones, the abs on Cristo della Minerva, legendary Naomi Mizrahi. Opulence is felt and heard, it's darling. Darling, come away with me. Darling, lick the sugar cube inside my mouth. Darling, dust the chandelier. Darling, read your Henry James. Darling, gossip ruins lives. Darling, bend. Darling, leather. Darling, can you tell a life? Darling, do you have a self? You deserve it, darling. Darling, read your history. Darling, call me sir. This poem is called Riding into Triumph. That summer, when I held my tablet like a mirror and watched myself die in so many ways, shot on the corner, in my car, and home, I would hide out in your home. And one day, too lazy to leave our bed to find your glasses, you enlarged the article I sent you on the Rothschild bronzes. A miracle attribution to Michelangelo based on their supple backs, a transverse arch, and the pattern of pubic hair. While you read, I felt grateful you humored my love of old things, things that last. I rested my head on the divot of your chest and seemed to float towards something like sleep, listening to your heart and its brine. Long before we'd met, doctors broke open your ribs, and your heart was light. Like some large creature heaved up from the sea, my spirit felt beached inside my body. Tide and cool wind, sun and seaweed, some people. None of these moved me. And I'm going to end with a newish poem. Thank you again for coming out. And this poem is called Epithalamium. We had a ritual. We met across this meandering river in the open field, feral with bindweed and St. Augustine grass, and fucked in his van. Today, I am alone and wandering in the scrabbled creek. What used to be submerged, sand and crushed shells, what counts for soil in Florida are the trails I walk on. Mosquitoes drink what little oasis I am. Bird calls and the piercing screech of insects all around, like the moldering green smell. Yet I can still hear what I allowed him to call me. Remember how I rippled with pleasure in his hands like algae on wavelets. Before this river was redirected, it joined two others and flowed into the Gulf. What we cannot change, we evade and call new, call delay. I could call the irrigation works at the headwater bog in Abad against flooding. Loneliness, what I could not change. I didn't care not knowing his name. I called him Law. Law was a swarm of words my mouth wanted. Clean, discreet, no face, no chat. I could say his chest was harbor. I could say his touch was rebel and renewed me. Love was never said nor written down. I miss it when my spirit blurs and I cannot see myself. I failed to move the ritual. Law said, I feel free out here. Under him, I could sometimes forget a man was lynched somewhere in this creek at the beginning of the century I was born in. Lavender lavishes itself in hummus. Buzzards hover like villains in the rafters of an opera. I confess this is not flesh anyone, myself included, has wanted. Once, when Law nor I could get off, I told a joke. Why are all black people ontologists? Because we have to keep proving we're human. It didn't go over very well. Moving off the trail, I wade into the river. Time, like the sunset, feels suspended. My bare feet shuffle pebbles like some shorebird grubbing about. An arrowhead clips my heel, a little blood flowing towards thickets of sweet bay and tie-tie. In some vista beyond my seeing, like the creek glazed by morning fog, all this will be gone. Gone the paths and signs, gone the milkweed, gone the armadillos in the field, gone the lynching tree, when the river rejoins the others and washes this away. No, not gone, but come together. History, nature, love, and loss brought to proper scale in a glorious algal bloom. A brightness of jade and amber, all this water moving toward where it's always meant to, where I cannot be, where I am. Thank you.
These poems were written for the memory of my mother, who was born in 1911 and died in she was born in, 1911 and died in 2012. I did not know she was that old. For all of her life, she had been 8 years younger. I was a little insulted. How dare she keep this from me? The family album. Call it blood memory, for I am the only one left to identify. Is that my mother calling me again? I wouldn't put it past her. Is it working? Okay. Call it blood memory, for I am the only one left to identify by name the ancestors. I'm the only one left of the women who sat around grandmother's oak table and wove stories of who and where, who knows the half of it, and when. I am the answer to the question my mother's sisters swallowed. What will you do with that child? I know now that I am here to give voice to tongues never silent and doors closing too quickly. I am of the age where death comes easily and visits often in those little obit notes of passing, reminding us how we have neglected dear ones, now lived again through faded pictures, stuck to crumbling pages. I buy tickets to places I may never visit, spend hours trying to remember if the image stuck in my head has origins in a dream or some foggy night slipping past, almost unnoticed. I am the last female of a family of women who wove the fabric of stories into doilies and slipcovers. I am the child with sparrow legs, sock heels stuck halfway in her shoes, drinking the last of metaphors left in teacups on the table, unattended. The book is a continuing story that begins mid-1800s and ends mid-1900s. The 1800s, the stories from the 1800s are those stories that I overheard as a child when I hid under the oak table, the dining room table, until they found me and chased me away. I learned to put them together because with each telling, some little detail would be left out or something would be added. But accumulated over the years, these are the stories I remember. A sounding in the woods. The way the family told it, Papa's brother Jackson was a troublemaker. Said he turned bad after their daddy was kidnapped by Johnny Reb. Conscripted, they said, but everyone knew he was taken in the war between the North and South because he had a way with saddles and rigs, because he could shoe a coltish horse and set it loose before the nails cooled down. Everyone knew Johnny Reb needed a man like that, free or slave, to keep the horses halfway fit. Knew they didn't care that taking him meant leaving behind two scraggly colored boys and a woman hid away somewhere. Said they came looking for him in broad daylight, the story goes. Came galloping through the brush until the dry leaves rustled like crackling fire, and the hounds itched to be loose. A sounding in the woods that told them something was wrong. And even long after the war, Jackson would bolt at the least bit of movement in the inconvenient light on a dark road that led them out of town. Papa went north, Jackson went west, leaving behind the one thing that told it all. When I found the long bullet in the middle drawer under Papa's shaving bowl, he told me it was the one that misfired when Jackson pulled him out of the river. Said it creased Jackson's hat and his too. Said he kept it for good luck, the way some folks keep a rabbit's foot. Said by rights this belongs to Jackson. I turned the shell over in my hand, all that copper light like a bright button. I wondered if Jackson had another with him on days he rode the rodeo, days he found himself cornered in South Dakota, or his face on a poster in Wyoming. Papa said they never thought to load the bullet, even when white folks paid them a few coins or cornmeal mush and clabber milk for a job that took all day. Told me that bullet was the one thing they owned outright. And even later, after I learned about firing pins and gunpowder, learned a bullet was a blind thing that knew no man, I'd look at it and wonder what luck it held to keep Papa safe a little while longer. My father was Army, so I had the opportunity to learn a lot about firing pins. He had confiscated 2 anti-tank bullets and set them, once he dug out the insides, and had sand poured in the middle and set them on either side of my mother's easy chair. Top kick. After 30 years, he mustered out of the service, kept his uniform stored in plastic, starch clean, and ribbons attached, insisted that his civvy shirts should be inspect straight and pant legs parade ready. He talked around his Army career, never direct, but made it clear that when the war in the European theater moved from west to east, he had moved from the motor pool to the front line. There, white boys wrote, Kilroy was here to claim their space, and the mess cook stayed pissed off all day. The tanks he serviced were massive hulks that too often made it a few miles from debarkation before they fell under enemy fire. Patton would have none of that, he muttered. He had all the hash marks and stripes to prove his point, and even boys in the neighborhood called him Sarge out of respect. He knew how to do things right and to do them once for effect. Shifted into civilian life as if the only thing on his mind was the lawn or the laundry or all the errands to run. That's what he was doing one gray Saturday morning following his wife until he felt thirsty. When she went to the farmer's market, he walked into a bar. No joke, a colored veteran walked into a bar on the waterfront and asked for a drink. Silence until the barkeep said, "We don't serve your kind in here." He was puzzled at first, trying to figure out how to subtract 30 years from this offense. Finally, he left the bar, walked back to his car, and returned minutes later. This time, he placed his service revolver on the counter and said, "He needs a drink." The barkeep flipped a glass quick and filled it brimful with one hand, triggering the alarm button under the bar with the other. He stood at attention, this man, my father, politely thanked the barkeep, holstered his gun in his belt, and drowned the shot in one gulp, straightened his tie, and readied himself for the cops and his wife. I really did grow up in a family of women because it was World War II, and all the men were out fighting in the service or manufacturing the goods that an army needed. So all my stories came to me via my mother and her many sisters. Very often I would, well, let me read the poem about this one sister that I didn't like and get it over with. Her name was Claudia, and once she gave me a birthday party that was green, knowing that I hated anything that was green and sweet. So she had green candy, green cake, green ice cream, green wrappings around the presents, and green candles. I did not take that well. Lawdy, Miss Claudia. Every week, Aunt Claudia traveled to Clayton, first by Hodeman trolley, then by county bus, and a 2-mile walk to clean a white woman's house. Every week she complained, moaning low, like Ma Rainey, her daily blues. Twice a week she made the 14-mile trip, passing through the gritty end of the city to the polished picture window sloping lawns. There, to be told, she had to wear a head rag so no loose kinks would fall into the soup or on the shelf with the good silver. And Claudia kept the work that kept her girls in Haristo teachers and more than meaty gristle on the table come Sundays. Sometimes she wondered what might have become of them if her late husband had conquered his faint heart. She wondered especially when she saw a colored man loading a wagon or on a ladder washing windows. When Big Jim died, she resolved her girls would never do day work, taught them deportment, taught them to wear clean underwear in case they fell out in the street, said if your drawers fall out, just step over them and keep moving like a lady. She might have been thinking about Big Jim that morning when the Hodeman trolley rammed a car some drunk left stuck in the tracks. The trolley had little time to stop, and where she was looking out the window, she was looking at the ceiling, at the door, at the seat tumbling, and all around yelling and scratching to get out. She lay there breathing the metallic air, trying to see what parts of her worked or not. She claimed that's when she heard Big Jim say, "Stay, stay." Just that morning, she'd read in the Post-Dispatch about a woman who had sued the transit company, and they paid. She thought about what that money would buy, how this would be her last day to go to Clayton. "Stay," said the voice, "stay." So she ripped off her hat, smudged her face with dirt, and pulled her skirt up just enough to show her clean panties if someone would bother to look real close. Immersion. The men are talking quietly about times so hard getting harder, how even CCC camp couldn't ease the burden of doing twice as much to get half as far as any white. The men are talking about olden days when any black runaway who sought plantation freedom followed in darkness the vagrant stars across the heavens. How different then when death was sure with a whip or gun, fear cleansed by the coolness of the river, or north wind, deliverance, resting on a fuzzy map half forgotten. The men who dare are talking about those men branded by the system. They talk Jackie Robinson, Paul Robeson, and Joe Louis. They talk Jesse Owens, fastest man in the West, they say, and pop their suspenders. The men are talking spunk and guts and who was outsmarted and who left eating dust. The men are talking about running the road, legit or not, how under that porter suit they are still men answering to the call of boy. Hands washed clean under sparkling white gloves. A. Philip Randolph's men coming home talking jack about cities they saw from a freight or the back of a dining car between plates going in out of galley smoke, changing a bunk or spotting a man running the tracks, yard dogs snarling inside his head. The men are putting on their home suits, sitting with ease, their backs against the wall. Saturday nights. Papa's girls had all manner of hair, baby fine tendrils that fell tic-tac on the floor, ropey coils loosened from rough poofs of hair. By late afternoon, the kitchen smelled of bergamot oil and rose water steamy like starch stuck to the flat iron. Each argued about who could fix one another's hair best while the hot comb sizzled in the click-clack beat of curling tongs. Mama said in slavery times, every little girl's hair was cut short to keep folks from guessing what man had fathered her, like it mattered when the wagon came to trundle off those sold down the road, their mamas left crying in the dust. They used stingy dabs of Madam C.J. Walker's salve, remembering Viola, whose baby fine hair was burnt to the root by backwater beauticians. They spoke of Dora Emma's crinkly hair, a thick braid down her back and stone gray, and Fanny's flapper bangs cut razor straight. They talked queens like Nefertiti and Sheba. They talked fast gals and saints and Broadway blackbirds like Ethel or Josephine, come from St. Louis like us when all was said and done. They burned the dredges, swept the matted hair into a pie tin, leaving brown marks where the kinky knots had been, so rats wouldn't make a nest of it, so no one would make a nappy wig of it, so no good folks would put a spell on them. They cleaned the kitchen with talk of possibilities of cornrows and spit curls and crimps of hair bursting like corks from champagne bottles. One thing I like about poems is that time melts away. And at my age, I'm beginning to understand that more and more every day. But you can begin in one time period, and by the end of a poem, a short one even, you're in another time period. But it's all melodic, it's all rhythmic, and it requires you to dance a lot between lines as you are writing. You can't just step from one line to the other. You have to make sure you do the right turns and pirouettes. Ablution. When the tools are laid out, stainless steel gleams like mirrors. Speculum, catheter, scalpel sharp, handle smooth as kid leather. She climbs onto the saddle of the table. Her feet slip into metal stirrups. The doctor's standard poodle nuzzles her arm, then goes to his blanket in the corner by the fireplace. She thinks how lucky for a colored girl to find a room so clean. She imagines the dog twitching his nose as he watches her brown legs spread eagle under the white cloth, his coat shiny as a new tuxedo. She hears him lapping water, a sound she carries with her as the doctor lays the rubber gloves on her belly and washes her clean. She makes the least suspenseful movement, turns her head to look at the back door bolted shut now that she has entered. The dog laps more water, a sound she remembers when her mother announces she has waited supper until her daughter returned. Her sisters pry with coded questions, but she is good at keeping secrets, never telling the boy's name or where he'd taken her. She hears only that lonely sound of the dog lapping water, a single movement so brief she has to bend toward her plate, slumping forward, not hearing her father push away from the table, sending water glasses spilling, forks rattling against knives, staining the bone-white tablecloth, the rush of blood that flows from her like a river as she becomes the one we never speak about, defiant, beautiful, fierce, Fanny, one photo frozen for the long goodbye. Thank you. Rough trade. My first school year, Mildred was paid to walk me 20 blocks to Simmons. Mildred was my play sister until she got interested in boys. She explained where we were and how fast we had to walk to be on time. We walked down Newstead, where gypsy cabs and fast gals cruised. Union taxis stayed away. White folks scared of rough trade, my mother said. Mildred's cousin drove a gypsy cab, and he was paid to take me home. My mother talked to him for a long time before she decided to trust him. Even when Mama wasn't sure, no telling who's watching that child, she said. Mildred said, look down when we passed the pool hall in a sanctified church. My eyes watered when their doors were open in the morning to air things out. Somebody swept to music pounded on the piano at the sanctified church. The piano set me and Mildred walking faster, giggling all the way. Even faster when we smelled sour mash odors soaked into the pool hall floor. Some days we ran to Taylor Avenue, but Anna was upset when I got winded. My mother said she picked Simmons because my cousin Anna taught there. She warned me to call her Miss Davis, not Sweet or Anna like family. Mildred said Simmons was the closest school for colored children. Don't matter if Coat Brian's down the block, all colored children got to walk. As soon as we arrived, Anna was there, smiling with both dimples showing. She smelled of talcum powder, the scent following her everywhere. I always called her Miss Davis in case some bad gal off Newstead was looking. Paint me visible. In a family of beautiful, intelligent, and profoundly crazy women, one danced in the dark to soothe her nerves. Another wove shawls from her husband's hair and discarded both when the work was done. Another read palms, tea leaves, cards, anything that left an imprint on her inner eye. Neighbors said she saw things nobody else could describe. Lord knows not every family has an oracle or two. Women who could hoard love like pirates' treasures, wool gatherers, omen givers, ones who stirred the soup of memory always in their favor. The oldest daughter, the most formidable, commanding the others. But you, child, grew up believing they all held magic, eyes in the back of their heads that told them what you planned to do before you did it. You thinking any one of these women could be your mother. You, the child, half hidden in the folds of their skirts. Lost baby blues. In the family, I am neither daughter nor granddaughter. I am what was placed in my mother's arms one night. I call my grandmother Mama. My family speaks of me in the third person. I am what was placed in my mother's arms one night. Her sister tells her to take care, since I will take care when she is old. But I don't know if she listens. She speaks of me in the third person, scolds me by my full name, even when she knows I'm not listening. I call my grandmother Mama, even though she tells me she is not my mother. Every day my mother scolds me, calls me out of my name so I'll listen. Her sisters tell her that I will take care of her later. My mother is not listening. She is scolding me for every breath I take. I was put in her arms during twilight sleep, she boasts. I didn't feel a thing. I am the thing she did not feel. She tells me I should feel grateful. I am grateful she has only one brother. His arms grow tired when he hits me. All these girls and one boy, Grandma complains. My mother's complaints are louder. I am not her daughter, not granddaughter. I am only what was placed in her arms one night. A given name. Many people tried to give me a nickname, but there's not much you can do with Colleen. It's either there or it's not. My mother would say Colleen, string bean, stick stack Stina, but that's about it. My birth father's name was a song all by itself. Persea Purcell, like pearls falling from a necklace. A shadowy figure my mother ignored, escaping like the nomad on the tapestry in the living room, the one room no one entered. My mother's second husband came marching in with a name, double-clicked with military precision, Jesse Dalton, his J.D. Hut 23. The cadence of my birth father's song forever dimmed. My grandfather's mother died with an Indian name, whispered only by a few, their footprints erased by prairie winds. My grandmother always went by the name Mama, not Belle or Anna, and never mentioned her mother's name, lost in the storms of Southern rebellion. I called my mother Ruth until high school, where my friends used moms, mama, and I learned to conform. My cousin's name was Modestine, her sleep filled with immodest dreams, but she riled stubborn if someone ever asked, "Where did you get that name?" "Same place you got yours," she'd snarl, and stare them down until they turned away. I was born on the same day in the same hospital as my cousin Lovita, down the hall, my mother said. I wondered if Lovita's mother said up the hall if she ever thought of me and her baby in the same nursery. I wondered if we sensed in our separate bassinets, family nearby yet far away. I wondered if Lovita found love followed her name, and if she ever answered, all names are made up, to those who question the origins of such delicious belongings on colored children. My family was fraught with Mays and bells and jeans sung with a twist. Jenny May brought me turpentine to remove my boyfriend's three-part name written in wall paint on the toilet. Of the two Jeans, Cora was the baby, until Irma came home with the baby nestled in the crook of her arm, as if a child had always been there. Charzelle and Mercedes, my cousins removed once or twice, in beautiful treble their names, the names we alone own, the names we hope could carry us past a snag in the road, past the poison of a single dark lens, past dogs and fire hoses and the riots of now, the names that call us home. Couple more. Yes, it's going to be a long poem. The answers to why. Because her daughter, Claudia, had babies while Mama was still having babies, family lines blurred, mothers and daughters waltzing just out of reach. Because her daughter, Jenny, turned Catholic, Mama took me to Lane Methodist each Sunday. Because a photographer penciled an outline around Mama's cottony hair, Jenny studied tinctures and rouges any one-eyed camera could find. Because she could not read, Mama memorized all the songs in the hymn book. The communion wine tasted like grape juice. Because Mama fed me from a bowl that read, "Find the bottom," I ate my vegetables, sipped pot liquor while she sang old-timey songs, spoon to mouth. Old Dan Tucker, too late to get a supper. Because Mama's fingers grew thick in winter, I learned to braid her hair. Because Mama got too old to do fine work, as she called it, I became her eyes to thread needles and pick loose hems. I made sure the white butcher didn't put his thumb on the scale. Because my mother Ruth worked at Fort Leonard Wood, Mama taught me to cook. What's a Leonard Wood, I asked. Because my mother opened mornings like a can of beans, fussing and cussing and quoting Shakespeare. Because between damn it, I'll bite you and scrambled eggs, because Mama said my mother was moody and needed help, I watched my mother paint fake stocking seams down her legs, shapely as Betty Grable's, high heels clicking on the linoleum heading to the door, factory headscarf tied neat as a Sunday hat. Because we had afternoons alone, Mama taught me how to knead bread dough the proper way, knuckles down. Because Mama singed her eyebrows when the pilot light went out, Papa brought a brand new stove. I missed the old stove and its stand-up oven. Because Papa said none of his girls would do day help, I read the papers and dialed the telephone for Mama. Because Papa died on the train coming home from California, Mama sat by the window all day and wouldn't talk. Because Claudia had become a widow before Papa died, my mother and her sisters fought to get Mama's attention. Because Mama said the four-poster was too big, after Papa died, I slept with her in the same bed she'd birthed babies who lived and those who didn't. I counted angels carved in the chifforobe door. Because the spider bit me the first night I slept in the four-poster, Mama propped me up on pillows so I wouldn't roll into the blister on my back. Because Mama covered the bite in goose grease, there was no trace of the spider come morning. Because the chifforobe held Papa's shaving basin and shoes, I spent hours inspecting the little shelves. Because Mama put plugs in the locks of Papa's roll-top desk and chifforobe, I always had a way out. Because Mama said there were two places she wouldn't want to be, hell and West Texas. We lived in the railroad house on Killarney for years. You should take heed of that, Cyrus. Because Mama didn't trust white people after the Klan shot the mules dead in front of the old family house. Because after they moved to Missouri, Mama said she saw ghosts walking the long hallway that banked the house. Because she said it so much I thought I saw them too. And my mother said, don't talk about the old ways, Mama. Because my mother worked long days, I heard Mama's stories. Because Mama lived in the past when Papa was alive and lived every day when he wasn't, she couldn't stop. Because my mother caught Mama telling me stories of the time before Lincoln freed us, my mother argued, but Mama said she had to tell me what was just because. And I'll end with this is a poem from both my mother and father. Lividity. After more than 70 years of marriage, the old wounds never healed. Layers of scabs scraped by the next discontent. A casual blow that left an open sore neglects metastasized. The lesion visible from a distance that even he, now blind, could see. The elm tree leaned closer, sap bled into the crusty bark. Limbs complained to windows barred against the shade. The sun, a mere flash of red, sinking into the evening's impending dark. And she who could not hear knew when the light would disappear. Thank you.
Another round of applause for our readers, Derrick, Lynn Austin, Aishan Hutchinson, Colleen McElroy. Join us next Wednesday, 7 p.m. at Schaumburg as we celebrate Cave Canem's 20th anniversary with an evening-length concert. Yes, 20th anniversary. Concert of poetry and music featuring Cave Canem co-founders Toy Derricotte and Cornelius Eady, as well as poetry icon Sonia Sanchez. Visit Cave Canem cavecanumpoets.org for more information. That's next week. But tonight, I invite you to grab a glass of wine, buy a book, and talk to our poets. Thank you so much for coming.